Check out carmarshal.com. The link is in the description. They help support us.
"49 Alabama sheriffs sued for refusal to produce public records." By staff writers, January 8, 2018. Alabama News, breaking news. 49 Alabama sheriffs sued for refusal to produce public records. Civil rights groups demand access to public records showing how sheriffs personally profit from funds allocated for feeding people in jail. On Friday, January 5, 2018, the Southern Center for Human Rights, an Alabama Appleseed Center for Law and Justice, filed a lawsuit in state court challenging the refusal of 49 Alabama sheriffs to produce public records. Those records would allegedly show whether, and if so by how much, the sheriffs have personally profited from funds allocated for feeding people in their jails. Cullman County Sheriff Matt Gentry is included on the roster of the 49 sheriffs sued. According to the Alabama Appleseed Center for Law and Justice, many sheriffs in Alabama contend that a state law authorizing them to personally keep and retain taxpayer dollars provided for feeding people in their jails permits them to take any amounts they do not spend on food as personal income. This archaic system is based on a dubious interpretation of state law that has been rejected by two different attorneys general of Alabama, who concluded that the law merely allows sheriffs to manage the money and use it for official purposes, not to line their own pockets, said Aaron Littman, a staff attorney at the Southern Center for Human Rights. It also raises grave ethical concerns, invites public corruption, and creates a perverse incentive to spend as little as possible on feeding people who are in jail. In an effort to learn which sheriffs across the state have taken taxpayers' money from jail food funds, and by how much they have profited, the plaintiff organizations have sent letters requesting copies of financial records showing how much each has kept for personal use. Although certain sheriffs have responded in compliance with Alabama's open records law, 49 sheriffs have refused for nearly half a year to comply with their clear obligations to produce the records, claiming instead that these documents are personal. The plaintiffs said some even recently responded to a request by their organizations for records regarding any jail food obtained for free or shortly before its expiration date with the same argument. The public has a right to know whether sheriffs are meeting the basic human needs of incarcerated people in their care, or are instead filling their personal coffers, said Frank Knock, the executive director of Alabama Appleseed. The Alabama Public Records Law exists so that we can hold our government accountable. Unfortunately, some sheriffs have decided that our public records law does not apply to them. The Southern Center for Human Rights claims to receive reports from people in Alabama jails that they are being provided inadequate or unhealthy meals or food that is spoiled or contaminated. They cite a 2009 case in which the former Morgan County sheriff was held in contempt and jailed by a federal judge after he purchased half of an 18-wheeler load of corn dogs for $500 and fed them to inmates at every meal. During the preceding year, he had schemed almost $100,000 from his office's food money account. It is presently unknown how much money sheriffs across the state have taken because most do not report it as income on state financial disclosure forms. The plaintiffs believe it is clear the sums can be significant. One sheriff who did make such a report took more than $250,000 in compensation from food provisions in both 2016 and 2015. Another sheriff was held in contempt of a federal court in 2017 after removing $160,000 from the jail food account and investing it in a used car dealership. The lawsuit was filed in Hale County Circuit Court. The plaintiff organizations, represented by attorneys at the Southern Center for Human Rights and Jake Watson and Rebecca Keith McKinney of Huntsville, seek an order from the court that the records they have requested are public, and that the defendant sheriffs must produce them. They have requested that their suit be consolidated with a related case filed by Sheriff Kenneth Ellis, which is currently pending before the same court and involves the same question of public access to information about how sheriffs profit from jail food funds. You can see the lawsuit in its entirety here.
Does the government work for us or do we work for the government? Tonight, what if the Constitution no longer applied? What if the whole purpose of the Constitution was to limit the government? What if Congress's enumerated powers in the Constitution no longer limited Congress, but were actually used as a justification to extend Congress's authority over every realm of human life? What if the president, meant to be an equal to Congress, has instead become a democratically elected, term-limited monarch? What if the president assumed that everything he did was legal just because he's the president? What if he could interrupt your regularly scheduled radio and TV programming for a special message from him? What if he could declare war on his own? What if he could read your emails and your texts without a search warrant? What if he could kill you without warning? What if Supreme Court justices no longer looked to the Constitution to determine the constitutionality of a law, but rather simply to what justices who preceded them thought about it? What if the rights and principles guaranteed in the Constitution have been so distorted in the past 200 years as to be unrecognizable by the founders? What if the 50 states were no longer sovereign entities, equals to each other, and parents of the federal government they voluntarily constituted? What if the states were mere provinces of a totally nationalized and fully centralized government? What if the Constitution was amended stealthily, not by constitutional amendments duly ratified by the states, but by the constant and persistent expansion of the federal government's role in our lives? What if the federal government decided if its own powers were proper and constitutional? What if the Constitution were no longer the supreme law of the land? What if you needed a license from the government to speak, to assemble, or to protest against the government? What if the government didn't like what you planned to say, and so it didn't give you the license? What if the right to keep and bear arms only applied to the government? What if posse comitatus, the federal law that prohibits our military from occupying our streets, were no longer in effect? What if the government considered the military an adequate dispenser of domestic law enforcement? What if cops looked and acted like troops and you couldn't distinguish the military from the police? What if you were not secure in your person, in your papers, and in your property? What if federal agents could write their own search warrants in defiance of the Constitution? What if the government could decide when you were and were not entitled to a jury trial? What if the government could take your property whenever it wanted? What if the government could continue prosecuting you until it got the verdict it wanted? What if the government could force you to testify against yourself simply by labeling you a domestic terrorist? What if the government could torture you until you said what the government wanted to hear? What if people running for president actually supported torture? What if the government tortured your children to get to you? What if government judges and government lawyers intimidated juries into convicting the innocent? What if the government could send you to your death and your innocence meant nothing so long as the government's procedures were followed? What if America's prison population, the largest in the world, was a cruel and unusual way for a country to be free? What if half the prison population never harmed anyone but themselves? What if the people had no rights except those the government chose to let them have? What if the states had no rights except to do as the federal government commanded? What if our elected officials didn't really live among us, but instead all had their hearts and homes in Washington, D.C.? What if the government could strip you of your rights because of where your mother was when you were born? What if the income tax was unconstitutional? What if the states were convinced to give up their representation in Congress? What if the government tried to ban you from using a substance in your body that is older than the government itself? What if voting didn't mean anything anymore because both political parties stand for big government? What if the government could write any law, regulate any behavior, and tax any event? The Constitution be damned. What if the government was the reason we don't have a Constitution anymore? What if you could love your country but hate what the government has done to it? What if sometimes to love your country you had to alter or abolish the government? What if Jefferson was right? What if that government is best which governs least? What if I'm right? What if the government is wrong? What if it is dangerous to be right when the government is wrong? What if it is better to perish fighting for freedom than to live as a slave? What if freedom's greatest hour of danger is now?
County. This is Charlotte County COPWATCH, and I wanted to explain what fair use is. You can use pieces of news articles if you're doing it for news reporting, you have commentary, and you're doing it for education purposes. So that's what fair use is, as you can see right here. Another reason why I wanted to make this video is to let you know I have just joined with Patreon. A nice thing with Patreon, I make no money on YouTube. They took the money away years ago, and so this is another way to give, and it's a nice thing too because you can give monthly. You can give $1, $5, $10, whatever. I do 4 to 5 hours a day on trying to wake the sheep up on how corrupt it is and different ways that you can fight the corruption. So Patreon is a way that you can do it, and then of course the old way is still there. Donate to Charlotte County COPWATCH with PayPal or credit card. So keep that in mind. 4 to 5 hours a day. I make no money, but the corruption happened to me and I'm sick of it, so I'm trying to wake people up. But my wife would love it if if we could get some help out there. There's 47,000 subscribers. Just think if each one of you subscribers just gave let's say actually yes, $1 a month. 47,000 subscribers gave $1 a month. That would be awesome. That's not going to happen. But anyways, that would be great if it did happen. But do the math in your head. Just think about it. Like I said, 4 to 5 hours a day. I get no money from YouTube. YouTube has gone nuts. You can't do anything anymore. They're taking the money away everywhere. So these are a couple different ways that you can still help out with all this time that I put in. And as you know, I'm in a special situation where at least I can do it. 4 to 5 hours a day. We have a cleaning company during the day. That's what allows me to do this, and we're debt free. So this is my hobby. I don't go fishing and all that other crap. I try to save the world. So help me out to make the wife happy, man. In fact, if you guys did give $1 a day, and there was 47,000 of you, and you did it, and each of you gave $1, and that was every month, oh my God, yes, I could quit. I could start suing them. Another idea too that we have is if I got some funds, we could actually contact everyone that has been ticketed and or arrested and put in jail and start sending them postcards to let them know we're here, and to see if everything went all right, and if it didn't, find out their story. So we could even do more investigations and more lawsuits. Lawsuits take money. So just think about that. 47,000 of you so far right now. $1 a day. $1 a month on Patreon, or $5 a month Patreon, 10, 20, whatever. Just do the math in your head. Help out. This is a lot of work every single day. Thanks.